Hello everyone. Okay, so we've looked at where the EQs are inside Cubase or your DAW. Now I want to do a really quick video on why we would use EQ, and there are loads of reasons for this, but perhaps you've recorded something. It could be a live group just with one microphone, or it could have been a single instrument, and you listen back and perhaps it's too bassy, so there's too much low end frequencies, it's quite boomy. You might use an EQ to take away that low end. You might find there's not enough bass. You've recorded something that should have a big low end signal like a bass guitar, and there's not enough low end. You've had the bass settings too low on the bass guitar perhaps, or just the way you captured the sound. You can use the EQ to boost as well as take away. Perhaps you've recorded something like a hi-hat that's very high-end frequencies, or a tambourine, and it hasn't got enough sparkle to it, so you want to add some top-end, or vice versa, you want to take away some top-end. There are other things you can use them for as well, is to get instruments working together. So if you think, well, let's have a look. So, you know, we mentioned the EQ, and we mentioned how it went from 20 to 20,000. You might find that certain instruments cover the same frequency spectrum. So the main one I'm thinking of all the time when I talk about this is the kick drum. So your your kick and your bass. I was trying to think of the other name for the bass drum pedal. Sorry, because kick drum's a very American term, but in England we call it the bass drum. But yeah, your kick drum and your bass guitar will predominantly sit around the 100 here, so quite low, so it's a bassy sound, but both of the instruments are demanding space. They both want space, so a little bit of EQing can sometimes help fit together, because you've got to think of your EQ as a jigsaw, and all your instruments have to fit somewhere in here. Obviously they overlap, you do have overlaps, but if you have too many instruments fighting for a little bit of space, it becomes quite cluttered, and the lower you go, the more space it takes up in the mix. So the bass and the kick drum and all the low frequencies can stifle a mix very quickly. You want to keep, so EQing is a really good way of getting everything to sit together. Very briefly, how about, sorry, I don't know what I did there. I'm on my, I'm just going to deactivate these, basically just by click on them, right click, deactivate, and you can actually take them away. So we've got the blank canvas to start with. Okay, how about we look at some, because this will help us with going back to MediaBay as well, because we looked at using MIDI files in MediaBay. Perhaps we could incorporate the EQ, or a quick look at getting some other instruments out of MediaBay. So I went to MediaBay. Remember, you got your shortcut F5 if you want. Now I'm just going to look at audio, so forget MIDI now, we're looking at audio. So let's type kick. Oh, there's a kick drum. So I double click again. Remember, double click brings it into the project. F5 to expand. Because the kick drum's quite small, I'm pressing G and H to minimize and maximize. Don't forget you got down here as well if you want to maximize that out. Okay, so let's put this on. So it goes 1, 2, 3, 4, and let's just move this locator so it only works with a bar. Started from there. We've got him on a loop, so there's our kick drum. Great thing about DAWs now, when you, in fact, let's not do it from the mixer, let's do it from the editor. So do you remember we said that you don't necessarily have to do F3 to the mixer, you can get quickly to the individual channel strips from there. Now if I press spacebar to start, oh, sorry. Oh, I'm on the wrong one. Sorry, this is the one we want, this is the kick drum. In fact, a lesson to myself, always name your tracks, which is what I said earlier as well, but okay, so edit. And there we go. And remember we said about where the bass and the bass guitar takes up. So it is this low end. So there's not a lot going on in the top at all. There's certainly sound there, as you heard there, but This is what they call the peak of the wave that you see there is called the fundamental, and that's where most of the energy of the sound is. Now, should we load something with a high frequency sound? So again, MediaBay goes under MediaBay, or remember we got F5. Let's look at a hi-hat. Have we got anything there? Let's look, see if we've got one on a loop. You can see loops in MediaBay as well, because I'll have a tempo marking. Okay, bit of an odd sounding hi-hat, but there you go. So I double clicked on there, and again, remember, always name your track for ease, and also you can color code your track if you want. Oh, we've got a yellow. Let's go red. Let's just look how this looks in. I'm soloing that, so you've got mute and solo. Got it on a loop. And as you can see, because it's a hi-hat sound, the fundamental is here of the waveform, and we haven't got any low end. So this is a point where you might want to cut the low end out, just in case there's any rumble in there at some place in your recording. You may find, to clean up the recording, you could cut out this bass. One way of doing this as well, which I forgot to say, so we'll try it on this. Always use presets if you want to get something quickly. So remember, it's the little box there on the right. I can load a preset and type what you want. So I want to get a low cut. It's actually there, but if I put a low cut, 120 hertz, and it's still, you see with that, sorry, let me get rid of that, my mouse again. It hasn't affected the sound whatsoever. So I can cut all this out before it actually starts to make any change to the audible change to the sound at all. So that's another way EQ could be used. Let me just show you really quickly. Really quick. Let's load a bass guitar up. So again, we're going to F5 for the MediaBay. Type in bass guitar. Bass. Oh, great. There's a bass guitar. So double click. Here he is in the track. Oh, in fact, one thing in MediaBay, which, let me just delete that, because this is a really good idea to do as well. If we sorry, I have F3 there, F5, you see there, in MediaBay, that will align anything into the timing, because we looked at using the chord track, but what I didn't mention with audio files, because MIDI files do this automatically, audio files you have to align into your project. So now when I click on a bass guitar and load him in, and you see now he's fitting directly in these bars, so it's actually worked out the BPM of my track, and when I've imported it in by double clicking, he's worked out the tempo. Now, remember where the fundamental, or that big energy, was in the kick drum? Let's just look. Well, here we go. Instead of going to the mixer, let's do it here. Do you see? It's almost identical. The fundamental of the wave is there. So these two together, it's going to work, but once we've decided which we want to take priority, the bass, the kick drum, or the bass guitar, we could perhaps EQ a tiny bit out the one we don't want the priority on. So the one we want priority on, say we wanted the kick to take priority of that area, we want that to be the sound because it's going to have a really big kick, my song. I may well go to my bass guitar, so I've highlighted the bass. Let's just name him again. It's always good practice. I may well decide that I want to take some of this bass frequency away. And now, another thing you can do, because you remember when we went to the channel strip, so we did F3, and we've got the bass, because look, I've named him here. Do you remember in the last lesson we looked at using these, I think we looked at the studio EQ, we certainly looked at frequency, but studio EQ, you know you can get the different frequencies around here. So if I chose this one, do you remember when we looked at, we can actually look at the band and how much of the band we expand out or take away. So this is quite surgical, to a tiny bit of the frequency, or we could boost quite a lot of the frequency. Perhaps with the bass guitar, just to give the kick drum a bit of space. We knew the fundamental, well, we can have a listen. The fundamental was around there. We may want to just take some of that away in order now the kick drum's got a bit more space to move in the mix. But we'll look at that in much more detail. I just wanted to show you how the EQ visually looks with different instruments. Okay, good luck.